And then the other piece, I think, as it relates to the woke police, I think it's just the evolution of, political correctness. Before it was a PC police, but now obviously the term of use and the term that's starting to spark or now being embraced by both sides of the cultural war is being woke, which, as you are pulling up here, is just the idea of being alert to injustice in society and especially racism.
You are listening to the Brown Perspective. What is going on? Today we are going to talk about The Bachelor.
Full disclosure, I do not watch this show, so I think this is a principiante's perspective on The Bachelor.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it either. The only reason that we're talking about it is because of the controversy. But there's two finalists, and one of them is the one that's embroiled in at the heart of this controversy. And I first found out about this because I listened to other podcasts and mainly about the economy. And one of the one
So
of
how did they start talking about this?
yeah, well, they were these guys. You gotta understand. Some of the guys that I listen to are they consider themselves like libertarian, hands off,
Hmm.
but a lot of the times they also lean more conservative. So this guy was really upset at what was going on because he said that it was just a mob mentality coming after her based on what happened. And I'm sure by now most people have seen the pictures. Let me show the pictures right here. So again, this is Rachel Kirkconnell. And when she was in college, she attended a Southern themed antebellum party. And you can see right here, so all of the faces of everyone else are blacked out except hers. And as you can see, there it's mainly what looks to be a white group of females. Maybe some Latinas in there, but I can't tell. I definitely don't see any African American women there.
Hmm.
And so at some point, this blew up. And on its own, it doesn't it created controversy. But then what happened was the host of The Bachelor, Chris Harrison, he went on extra and then he tried to defend her. And the exact words that he used were the woke police. There's a group now of people, and I'd be interested to get your take to see if you and I fit into this category now of being considered woke police. Maybe we'll find out at the end of this discussion. So
I
this guy
think so.
goes on the show, the extra, and he tries to defend her, saying that there's a mob mentality coming after her and trying to downplay it, saying, "Look, she was young. Young kids do these type of things. It shouldn't be a big deal." But he was saying it to a black host, Rachel Lindsay, and she was actually the Bachelorette from the 13th season. It was interesting because he this is a white host telling a black woman that this isn't such a big deal, and so he stoked this, and ultimately he had to step down as well. So the podcaster that I was listening to, he was complaining about all this, saying that how it started out with this Rachel Kirkconnell, that controversy surrounding her, and then this guy came to her defense, and now they're coming after him, and he had to step aside from his role in The Bachelor. And so I wanted to just get your thoughts.
I think I definitely want to start at the premise of the whole show, though. I mean, the whole concept of, you have one man and he has the opportunity to date and spend time with all these women. I know there's also the Bachelorette
Mm-hmm.
show as well, which is the equivalent of this. But like to me, it's funny how I mean this show is kind of doomed from the beginning, given kind of like the format that they have. And then the other piece, I think, as it relates to the woke police, I think it's just the evolution of, political correctness. Before it was a PC police, but now obviously the term of use and the term that's starting to spark or now being embraced by both sides of the cultural war is being woke, which, as you are pulling up here, is just the idea of being alert to injustice in society and especially racism. And I think to me this episode is indicative of like of a like understanding why it may be hurtful for a black person to um to see the culture of the slaving South honored, and then also for, in this case, Chris Harris to understand that, yeah, it may not seem a big deal to them, but was for somebody who's black, who has been oppressed, who has been on the short end of that chasm, that's not a good place to be, and that explains some of the sensitivities that people have around that whole episode, I think.
Yeah, and when Rachel Lindsay interviewed him on Extra, she told him exactly that same thing. She said, "If I went to that party, who would I be? What would my role be? What would I dress up as?" Right? It
Yeah.
definitely is. I had this discussion with some people in my circle of friends, and being Latinos, a lot of Latinos are actually fall into the conservative side where they say, "Well, this isn't such a big deal." And a few of them said that. It was like, oh, people just the woke police complaining what's going on here. And then I said, okay, well, let's say you went to that party, if it's okay for you to go to that party, because you're more like a light skinned Latina, so you can get all of that white privilege. Let's say you have a black friend. Would you invite your black friend? And dude, silence, right?
Mm.
What? How would your black friend feel about going to a party like this? And if your black friend is not comfortable going, then at a minimum, you know that this thing is incredibly insensitive to black people. Look, I'm not. It's not to say that there may not be some black people that may feel comfortable going to this, but given the history that of black people in this country, and then also given what happened last year in 2020, and also let me just quickly say that one of the reasons why The Bachelor decided to cast the first black person as the lead is because of
Hmm.
what happened in 2020. There was just too much pressure on them to do something. Remember all these companies that were coming out saying that they support Black Lives Matter, and I
Yep.
just told you that's just all PR. That they're just doing it because at this point the tide has shifted. The public is no longer accepting these things or just being okay with these things happening. So the Bachelor saw the writing on the wall and they rushed and they tried to get a black lead actor to be the Bachelor. And by the way, let's talk a little bit about the lead, because where's the picture of him? So he's right here. I think there's another picture. This falls in the spectrum of black people. Definitely they weren't going to choose one with the features that are black, that even white America perceives to be threatening, right? They went for
Hmm.
a Barack Obama type of neutral, non-threatening black guy that is even ambiguous, right? This guy could be Middle Eastern, he could be Latino. It's kind of hard to say. So even though they tried to rush and get a black bachelor, it still shows you that they're only willing to go so far.
Yes, so many things to say, and I think there's a couple of other things happening right now in TV and entertainment that I definitely want to connect to this conversation. The one being, I know that Netflix also has this series which I have not seen, but I know that it's called Bridgertown,
Hmm.
and I know that is the premise is about, a drama that takes place back in the 19th century in London, and it does include people of color, and it does include a an African American. And I know that the person who, I believe she is the writer or the producer, Shonda Rhimes, is the one who sort of created
Yeah, I
this
know. I've
TV
heard of it.
show. Yeah, Bridgertown, I guess is what it's called.
That's
Sorry,
the
my
one with the
English is not
steamy
very
sex
good looking.
scenes, right?
Huh?
That's the one that's getting all this attention because of the steamy sex scenes that it has.
Yes, so it's part of that, and also because it does include people of color, particularly African Americans, in those leading roles, right?
Hmm.
And I guess you may argue that, is there something to be said about that? Those steamy sex scenes are, attributed to the sort of the African American lead, not African Americans, because he's actually British, to the light skin brother who is represented, who is the Duke in
Mm-hmm.
that series. And so there's that, and then the whole controversy that happened just last weekend and recently with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry and some of the allegations about how the royal family was concerned about the color of their baby and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to see that race and class play such a central role in our society, and we're still not comfortable talking about it and exploring those things and and I guess leaning into this controversy to learn some of the things of why is it that this is so hurtful, and why is it that some people have such a a revulsion defensive reaction to it, like, oh, you just, so what, where so if I can say this, or if I can watch this, or if this person cannot defend the bachelor's actions, or what can we do, so I think there's this extreme reaction when something like this comes up through our entertainment and our media.
The show has had a checkered history with race. If you just go to the wiki page, they have where's that part right here? They have a whole list of incidents that could be considered borderline racist, discriminatory, insensitive, and they were even sued by two black guys that applied and were rejected back in 2012, I believe, because they felt that their color played a role. And I was reading about this, but it says that the few times that they have featured either black or mixed uh, personalities, that they've always been the first few to get disqualified within the first week or the second week. And even with The Bachelorette, which this is for Rachel Lindsay, when her show, even though she was highly qualified, professional, she was attractive, she had everything going for her, the ratings took a hit. So ratings were down. So what does this tell you? And this tells you that the show itself is not as guilty as much as also its viewers. And so all of the outrage here, that tells you that, yeah, sure, we should talk about what the show did, how they rushed a black lead to be the Bachelor, and how now they're doing like damage control, and this guy Chris Harrison, he shouldn't have gone out and tried to downplay this. But also it's really the people that are watching the show, the ones that are so upset, because if you think about it, like, why does this thing have to be such a big deal to begin with, right? So let's just look at what she did. Let's talk about this party, for example. So if you're in college and you're between the ages of 18 and 22, you're going to do a lot of stupid shit. And I think with her, uh, there are people that are saying that maybe there are hints that she's racist or not, but considering most young Americans that are privileged enough not to have to worry about race, they're probably just ignorant of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't mean it's not racially insensitive. So you go to a party like this, totally insensitive, and it's probably not the smartest thing to do. But at the same time, if you're young and stupid and you don't really know any of this stuff, you just go to that party. Because again, a lot of even Latinas, if they were invited to a party like this, they would be so excited, and they would go and they have the opportunity to dress up as Gone with the Wind. So I think,
And that Gone with the Wind was not problematic at all.
right. But I think when this came up, if people would have just, so it's insensitive. It could have just been like, look, she if she would have came out with an apology and said, yeah, totally insensitive, I shouldn't have done this shit. Um, Whatever, I apologize. Like, just looking back on it, if she would have just said that, and then people would have just moved on, I think that I would have been okay with this. I think the problem is that this guy Chris Harrison, I don't know for what reason he felt that he could go and defend her and try to stand up against the what he considers the woke police, and then also doing it to a black woman, considering the dynamic, right? The dynamic at play where here comes the white man to tell us that it's okay, nothing to see here. Like, that's just not going to go over very well. This guy should have just shut his mouth, let the girl explain herself. If she would have said, yeah, I didn't know, I apologize, and the apologize would have been sincere, the apology would have been sincere, I think most people would have probably just gone beyond this. I mean, do you think, so certainly I don't think that there should have been anything beyond this to go after her. Or do you think I'm like downplaying this as well? Do you think this is more severe than I'm that I'm making it out to be.
Well, I think there's the context, right? Because this certainly looks like there's a sorority function, and so we don't know, you know, what the additional context is. Is there are the folks who are serving them mostly people of color, particularly African Americans? Is there other things that are, and obviously in some essence, this sort of focuses on the glamour, on the wealthy experience of being a rich landowner in the South, not acknowledging that a lot of that wealth was from stolen land and then from forced enslaved labor, right? And incredible.
But if right, right. But if you have a problem with this, then you also should have a problem with timepieces that glamorize 1700 or 1800 England, like Pride and Prejudice, where all they focus
Mhm.
on is just the wealth and the opulence of royalty, and then we're watching a movie for 2 hours dealing with their love dramas when they don't tell you all of the atrocities that they were committing with that money in the Americas, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not saying this party is definitely offensive. You can even call the party itself racist. And there's a spectrum to racism, right? There's the open bigots that are like in Congress, the ones that are actively trying to pass laws that are detrimental to Black or Hispanics. There's people that are actively participating in ways to try to keep people down, non-white people. And then
And
there's
prevented them
incidents
from
like this
voting.
one where what's that?
And preventing them from voting.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's incidents like this one where someone goes to a function and the function itself is racist, and yeah, it's wrong, it's offensive to people, but the outrage, I think it is blown out of proportion. But I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's because this guy Chris Harrison stepped into the mix. If he hadn't done it, I wonder if she would have just came around and said, you know what, I apologize, I'm sorry, and then we would have just moved on. I don't know, but just this level of outrage, you're gonna get tired of me hearing me say this, but this is the type of level of outrage that people should have for us bombing Syria, for
Hmm.
issues like that actually kill people, for laws that are racist,
Well,
right?
and then you also are, and she is one of the finalists to potentially, I guess, be engaged to or maybe eventually married this black man too. So I think there's also that consideration, right? Like that she went into the show knowing that the protagonist was African American,
Yeah,
and
but you
that and now she's getting to a point where she's one of the finalists. And I know that in some ways, black and white relationships are, I think, yes, they were controversial and illegal for a long time, but they also seem to be more accepted now, right? So yeah, so it's I think part of it speaks to the fact that there's a lot of we're still unpacking how parties like the one that's portrayed there and other things are still hurtful and
mhm.
remind us of the very real ways that that black people and people of color have been oppressed throughout time.
Yeah, but if I play devil's advocate here, I could also say that she's doing this for the publicity. That even if she gets chosen and they get married, you can always get divorced, right? There's not. Yeah, marriage is supposed to be a lifetime commitment, but these days, come on, you get married 2 years later, you get a divorce, your profile goes up. So I don't know if I would put much weight into her saying that the fact that she's on the show, that's enough proof that she's not racist. And I don't know if she is. Like, again, you always have to look at, is there a pattern that you see? So I know there have been other allegations that have come out against her. I think at some point someone said that she was criticizing one of her friends for dating black people. So that adds to it a bit as well. But again, are you going to believe that at face value? Is there something else? Is there something concrete that we can point to and say, yes, this is her? Because if we're just hearing it from someone else, then how do we know that that's the truth or not? So it's really hard, but I do think that when these things blow out of hand, sometimes they may have a tendency of backfiring. I do think that it would serve us better if we could have actual conversations about this. And if she came out and said, look, yeah, this party was racist, and if everybody agrees that it was racist, I don't know why people are defending it also and saying that there's nothing wrong with attending a party like this. It's obviously racist. It's already offensive, and yeah, there's racism in there. If you want to unpack it, right, there's racism in there because, as you mentioned, the history of it and usually the status that these women held in the South attached to wealth and the wealthy landowners and the slaves. A black person would definitely, if a black woman went to this party, she would not feel comfortable being dressed like that if she understood the history of her people in this country. So definitely it's racist. I don't understand people that are trying to defend it. But at the same time, just because she attended this function and because it was racist, that doesn't mean that we should all of a sudden like start yelling for her to get kicked off the show. Or she even received death threats for this.
Wow.
I mean, we need to be able to talk about this and give her a chance to explain herself. And if she did an apology. From the comments that I read, it did seem sincere. I mean, at least people are taking it to be sincere. But then judge her after that. And if it was just something stupid that a 19 or 20 or however old she was, a 20-year-old did, then I think as a country we should learn to kind of handle these events a little bit better so that we can save our outrage for the things that are on the spectrum of racism, for the ones that are a little bit more serious or more that actually have negative consequences and affect people.
Good point.
Anyway, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, thank you for introducing me to the wonderful world of Bachelor. Now I may tune in tomorrow to see what happens.
No, I'm still not going to tune in. I'll just read about it later. I don't really care. But I will listen to the podcast of the financial person that I listen to just to see what the take is. I mean, I'm sure they're going to rant on this, but and if someone's going to criticize me for listening to someone like that, this is what I'll say. You have to be able to take in what other people say and consider what people tell you and what other people are saying without actually believing those things. Ultimately, it's your responsibility as an individual to take in all this information and assess it and figure it out for yourself what it is that you want to take. And sometimes you listen to people that you agree with them 80% of the time. You don't agree with them 20% of the time. So in that case, just discard what's not useful to you and take the stuff that is useful. And that way you can actually develop the capacity to listen to people that you don't entirely agree with. So just want to put that out there.
That's some good advice from RO to the world.
All right, then let's wrap this up. So if you all out there enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective. We're on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Nos vemos.
Ciao.